Yeah, just his overall spell at Everton, Joe. You know, what do Everton fans think of him? And obviously, he'll come up against Everton in potential relegation battles.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one to discuss his legacy, because it's difficult, and it's the same that you have for most players that have been at the club over the last 5 or 6 years, because the reality is the club's been an absolute mess. It's been a mismatch of the plans of different managers and different directors of football, as the club has chopped and changed between styles and identities. And as a result of that, a lot of players have got lost in the mix. And Ben Godfrey is probably one of them. He was signed with a huge degree of promise, and Carlo Ancelotti liked him and liked to play him on at left back. But injuries kind of ruined the middle stint of his time. And then after, his last 18 months to 2 years at Everton were kind of as a bit part player, mainly because he could never really get the momentum because he kept having serious injuries. Like, he was one of several players who fell into that kind of trap with Everton, where he just could never quite get the momentum going in their careers, having suffered a setback. And obviously because managers kept changing, things like that also made it tougher for him. So I think you would come away from it and you say he'd be disappointed by his time at Everton, and I think the club probably would be as well. But you couldn't necessarily put that all down at Ben's door. A lot of it was the instability at the club. I think the problem that Ben had for a lot of his time was, or his strongest attribute was also his weakest point, and that was his versatility. So quite often he spent a lot of time playing at fullback. He was better on the left than he was on the right, but it's the right where he played most of last season, most of his 15 appearances last season for Everton. But really, I think he's a player that prefers to play down the middle. His best performance for Everton last season was in a centre-back free partnership when Everton went away to Burnley in December of last year and won 2-0. And it'd be quite easy to find, but he's a strong lad. But he's also got a lot of pace. So he helps that back line in terms of recovery speed. If you want to play a higher back line, you can get away with a lot more by having Ben Godfrey there. And the best kind of example and evidence of that is if you were to look back to that Burnley game. That Burnley game was a huge game for Everton. It came just after the points deductions, and Burnley being a side that they were obviously going to be in a relegation battle with. And Everton were leading at Turf Moor. And Burnley try and do them on a counter attack, and there's this attack, and if you watch it on the TV, the highlights are incredible. I can't remember who it is who's got the ball for Burnley down the right wing, but they cross across the face of Pickford's goal for Zeki Amdouni. He has a tap in if the ball gets there, and when the cross is played, Godfrey isn't on your screen. But before it gets to Amdouni, he's already in the box. Godfrey has made it back and cleared it over the bar. And it's just those type of things, that little bit of extra last-ditch pace for the last-ditch defending that help to kind of get you and him a little bit out of trouble as well. Because, like I said, it's probably a reason why he was never able to quite cement it down in the middle of the pitch. But that's where he grew up playing. Reference his Ipswich Town days. Obviously, that was a much lower level, but he was best for Shrewsbury in a defensive midfield option. I was a bit disappointed that he never quite seemed to develop into that role as a senior professional, because I think that it was one that when you looked at him in his latter teenage years, you thought he might have had the potential to do so. But yeah, centre-back and a back three pairing, I think he gives you a lot of options, and what he certainly has got is a lot of experience. He played over 100 times in the Premier League for Everton, and obviously most of that over recent years has been in relegation battles that he has been successful in. So he is a useful experience to have in a dressing room of players, which still includes a lot of players that are very new to the Premier League.